So what if the most intense, consuming, passionate relationship you've ever had wasn't actually driven by love at all,
Oh, wow.
right? What if it was just a disguised, really desperate need for control?
That is a heavy question to start with.
It is, but I mean, you are probably here because you want the bottom line on navigating human connection, right? Without feeling totally overwhelmed by the noise of it all.
Yeah, exactly. People just want to understand the mechanics of their own messy human brains.
Exactly. And you want to do it in a way that actually makes sense in the real world. So today, we are doing a deep dive into a really fascinating set of materials for April 3rd, 2026.
Right, the ones created by Tarot, by He.
Yes, exactly. And it's broken down into two distinct parts, which I love. There's an astrology of the day forecast, which sort of sets the psychological weather, and then a companion piece of short fiction.
A StoryScope, they call it.
Yeah, a StoryScope. It features two characters, Elias and Mara. And our mission today is to essentially extract the core wisdom from these materials to help you, the listener, navigate your own vulnerable conversations and, those intense, gripping emotions we all face.
Hmm.
So, okay, let's unpack this.
Well, what's fascinating here is how incredibly rare it is to see abstract forecasts paired with a practical narrative case study.
Right. Usually it's just theory.
Exactly. Usually an astrological reading or psychological framing just stays super theoretical. It'll just suggest, like, oh, watch out for communication issues today, or brace for intensity.
Yeah, Mercury is in retrograde. Hide under your bed.
Right. But by pairing the forecast with a narrative, a real-world scenario with Elias and Mara sitting in a cafe, we get to actually observe the messy, really subtle mechanics of these shifts.
We get to move from theory directly into practice.
Exactly.
But before we literally walk into that cafe with them, we kind of need to understand the underlying mechanics of this cosmic weather, right?
Yeah, we have to know what's dictating their behavior.
Because High Seas forecast highlights two major astrological events for the day, and they operate in pretty much total contradiction to each other.
Total opposites, yeah.
So first we have this Mercury trine Jupiter transit. And to understand what that actually means, you kind of have to look at the geometry of it.
Right, the actual angles.
Yeah. A trine in astrology represents a 120-degree angle between planets. So it's essentially the path of least resistance.
It's just very flowing, harmonious energy.
Exactly. I like to think of it like riding a bike downhill. You're just coasting.
And in this specific case, you have Mercury, which is the planet governing communication and cognition, riding downhill with Jupiter, the planet of expansion and higher meaning.
Oh, that sounds nice.
It is. The result is this profound softening of our conversational borders. People are suddenly pondering higher truths. Words just flow effortlessly.
Wow.
Yeah. And there is this genuine willingness to be deeply, openly vulnerable. It just creates a really beautiful, heart-centered environment.
Okay, but, and there's always a but, the forecast attaches a very specific caveat to all that downhill momentum, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's a big warning.
Right. It says, do not promise anything you haven't fully thought through. Because when the gates of communication swing wide open like that, the immediate temptation is to try to secure that expansive feeling by making some grand commitment.
Oh, totally. You just want to lock it in.
Yes. It's just like that expansive, incredibly honest feeling of a late-night deep talk with a close friend. You know the ones?
Oh, yeah. The 2 a.m. talks.
Exactly. It's 2 a.m., your defenses are totally down, you are solving all the world's problems, and you feel so intensely connected that you are ready to promise you'll both move to a farm together and start a commune.
Which, I mean, feels amazing in the moment.
Right.
But it completely lacks the necessary grounding to survive the light of day. And that's where the forecast introduces the second transit, which just violently disrupts all that soft flowing energy.
Venus square Pluto.
Yeah, Venus square Pluto.
And here is where we hit the friction. Because if a trine is a nice downhill slope, a square is a 90-degree angle.
It's a collision at a busy intersection.
Exactly. It represents intense tension and conflict.
Right, specifically a collision between Venus, which governs love and our value systems, and Pluto, which is the planet associated with the underworld, transformation, power dynamics, and obsession.
Just a really light, breezy planet.
Yeah, super chill. No, it creates this force of passionate, almost overwhelming desire. But it comes with a blaring siren of a warning.
And this is huge. The warning is, do not confuse emotional depth with emotional health.
That is the core of it.
Honestly, that distinction is the crux of this entire deep dive. Do not confuse emotional depth with emotional health, because this transit brings up jealousy, resentment, and this really dark need to control or possess someone.
Yeah, it creates this messy cocktail where vulnerability just mixes directly with obsession.
Yes, it's that sudden, gripping urge to double text an ex because you just cannot stand the
Oh,
silence.
we've all been there.
Right. And you convince yourself that your absolute panic is actually a symptom of how much you care about them.
Exactly. We are looking at the ultimate tension here between transformation on one side and obsession on the other.
Right.
On one hand, you have the Mercury-Jupiter desire to genuinely connect and be seen, but on the other, you have the Venus-Pluto survival instinct to lock down that connection, to possess it,
Yeah.
to make absolutely sure it can never leave you.
Wow.
So the real challenge laid out for you today is learning to identify the exact mechanism of your own attachments. You have to ask yourself, are you actually connecting with someone, or are you just gripping them too tightly?
And that urge to possess, that intense Venus square Pluto energy, isn't just some abstract theory we're throwing around.
No, not at all.
It's the exact psychological trap Elias is actively trying to escape when he sits down across from Mara at the cafe in our StoryScope.
Right, the narrative piece.
Yeah. We are immediately given a look into Elias's internal state. And the text notes that his words no longer snag on the barbs he had spent years cultivating. And his silences, which used to be these literal barricades, now just feel like a held breath.
Let's break down the psychology of that shift for a second. Because a conversational barb isn't just a random sharp comment someone makes.
Right.
It is a highly effective defense mechanism. A barb is specifically designed to snag the other person, forcing them to stop, explain themselves, or just get defensive.
Yeah, it completely derails them.
Exactly. It allows the person using the barb to control the pacing of the intimacy. So by dropping those barbs, Elias is actively giving up his ability to control the flow of their conversation.
And transforming a barricade into a held breath is a huge physiological difference, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Because a barricade keeps someone out entirely. But a held breath implies this sense of anticipation, a willingness to just see what happens next without forcing an action.
Right.
So when Mara sits down, she doesn't just smile and say hello. The story says she assesses him like she's assessing the weather.
Which is such a great detail.
It is, because she knows his patterns and she is fully bracing for their usual toxic dynamic. But Elias actually drops his rehearsed explanations. He admits out loud that he's rethinking how he holds people and outcomes.
He is attempting, in real time, to step out of that Venus-Pluto cycle of possession.
Okay, but I have to offer a bit of pushback here.
Okay, let's hear it.
Or at least a question that really came up for me while I was reading this part. Is Elias actually transforming, or is this brand new vulnerability just another far more subtle manipulation tactic to win Mara back?
Oh, that's a really interesting point.
Because, I've seen people learn therapeutic language just to completely weaponize it.
Totally. Therapy speak is everywhere.
Right. They use terms like holding space or rethinking outcomes to essentially corner you into thinking they've changed, which is just a sneaky new way to secure the outcome they want anyway.
It is a very valid suspicion, particularly when dealing with someone who has a documented history of controlling behavior. Vulnerability is frequently weaponized like that. But the text actually provides a crucial clue regarding Elias's genuine state of mind here. He makes a very specific, totally unprompted admission.
Oh, about intensity.
Yes. He tells Mara he realizes he used to confuse intensity with meaning. He says if something felt powerful or chaotic, he just assumed it was important, worth keeping, and ultimately worth controlling.
He is literally dismantling his own defense mechanism right there on the table.
Exactly. By naming the mechanism out loud to the exact person he used it against, he strips it of its power. This directly mirrors that forecast warning we talked about earlier.
The one about confusing emotional depth with emotional health.
Yes. Elias is acknowledging that for years he mistook the anxious, possessive grip of control for genuine love. He assumed the friction itself was proof of the relationship's value.
Wow.
So he is no longer trying to secure an outcome here. He is simply reporting from the trenches of his own realization.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though, because the story anchors this theoretical realization in a very tangible memory from their past.
The apartment.
Right. To truly understand the difference between depth and health, Mara brings up this old apartment they looked at. The one with the green tiles in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Elias remembers wanting to buy it immediately. They had only seen it once, and he was ready to sign the papers that day, totally convinced it was perfect.
It's such a seemingly mundane detail, but it holds the entire weight of their past dynamic.
It really does. Because Mara hits him with the absolute reality of that day. She tells him, no, you thought it would fix something.
Yeah.
And we can tie this directly back to the astrology forecast, because in that Venus square Pluto warning, there is a specific caution about looking at your financial habits to see where you are spending from emotion instead of intention.
Oh, that's a brilliant connection.
Right. Elias wanting to buy that apartment wasn't just a bad real estate choice. Impulse buying that apartment was essentially an emotional quarantine.
An emotional quarantine.
Yeah.
Wow.
He was trying to build this little terrarium to trap the relationship inside so it couldn't change or escape him.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it just reveals the incredibly intricate ways we operate under the guise of insecurity.
Totally.
And Mara's perspective in this scene is profoundly illuminating. She confesses that back then, she actually found Elias's intensity flattering. It made her feel like she mattered more than anything else in his world. And this is a cognitive trap so many people fall into. It is remarkably easy to mistake someone's possessiveness for deep, all-consuming devotion.
Because the cultural narrative completely romanticizes that exact behavior.
Oh, 100%.
We are so conditioned to look at jealousy or the desire to monopolize someone's time and think, oh, look how much they care about me.
Right. But Mara has clearly done the psychological work to see through that illusion now. She delivers the devastating truth of this situation to him.
Which is what?
That it wasn't that she mattered more to him.
Yeah.
It was that he just needed her to fit into something that belonged to him.
Oof.
Yeah. He was casting her in the role of a partner in his perfectly controlled play. But true emotional health requires boundaries. It requires seeing the other person as an autonomous human being, not just a puzzle piece, meant to alleviate your own internal anxiety. And Elias finally replies that he is starting to understand the difference between depth and health.
And Mara simply says, good, because they're not the same.
It's a quiet breakthrough, but it's a massive one.
It is. But this brings us to the resolution of the story. Or, well, rather, the fascinating lack of a traditional resolution.
Right. They don't exactly ride off into the sunset.
Exactly. Now that both of these individuals are hyper-aware of their toxic patterns, how do they actually communicate moving forward? You can't just revert to small talk about the weather, but jumping back into a relationship is just falling into the old trap.
You have to step into the space between wanting and holding.
Yeah, and Elias admits something incredibly raw to navigate this.
What?
He tells Mara he asked her to meet because he misses her, but also, and this is key, because he needed to know if he actually misses her, or if he just misses the version of her he tried to shape.
That is profound self-awareness.
Right. He is actively choosing to sit right in the middle of his own uncertainty. And Mara holds herself accountable as well. She admits her own control issues. She states that she holds on to control by closing the door before anyone can step through it.
The mechanism of preemptive rejection.
Yes.
It is just another manifestation of that Pluto control energy. If she ends it first or refuses to let anyone in, she controls the pain.
Right. She can't be caught off guard.
Exactly. They are both laying their habitual defense mechanisms entirely face up on the table for the first time.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, trying to actually apply this to your own life?
Right. How do we use this?
Well, we live in a society that fundamentally demands certainty, right? We want the neat little bow. When a relationship is in limbo, we want the text message that says, we are back together. Or we want the definitive conversation that says, we are officially over.
And to understand why we crave that certainty so badly, we have to look at the psychology of cognitive closure.
Okay, tell me about that.
Basically, the human brain absolutely abhors a vacuum. Ambiguity actually registers in the amygdala as a literal threat to your survival.
Wait, really? A literal threat?
Yes. A known bad outcome, like a final painful breakup, is actually less metabolically expensive for your brain to process than an unknown outcome.
Oh, wow. That makes so much sense.
Yeah. When you don't know where you stand, your brain is constantly burning energy running simulations of what might happen. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
That is why the urge to force an answer, even a painful one, feels so overwhelmingly urgent.
But Elias and Mara decide to actively fight that biological urge. They agree to leave the cafe, to just think, and to not promise anything they haven't actually lived through.
Yeah.
The story ends with Elias just watching her walk away, and for the first time, he feels her absence not as a void that he has to frantically try to fill, but simply as a space he does not need to rush into occupying.
This raises an important question about how we define a successful interaction, honestly.
Oh, absolutely.
Because notice how perfectly Elias and Mara executed the advice from the Mercury trine Jupiter forecast. Do not promise anything you haven't thought through.
Right.
If Elias had defaulted to his old patterns, he would have used this beautiful, vulnerable conversation to lock Mara down again. He would have negotiated some outcome just to soothe his amygdala.
He would have tried to buy the apartment with the green tiles all over again, just in a slightly different way.
Exactly. Instead, he allowed the silence to simply be silence. The final line of the narrative highlights this beautifully. It says, "For once, the silence did not demand an answer. It simply waited." That is the ultimate evidence of his transformation. Choosing ambiguity over forced closure is a profound rewiring of his trauma responses.
Yeah, it really is.
He's moved from the controlling, possessive energy of Venus square Pluto into a state of genuine emotional health. He's recognizing that his desire to have her does not actually dictate what is healthy for either of them in this current moment.
It is such a profound shift in perspective. And, it brings us right back to the core mission of why we are doing a deep dive into these sources today.
Right.
We set out to find actionable insights on navigating those really intense, chaotic emotions. And synthesizing the wisdom from tarot by High C gives us an incredibly clear roadmap to do that.
It really does.
First, you need to examine your habits, particularly your financial and emotional impulses, looking for signs of possessiveness. Ask yourself if you are making decisions from a place of grounded intention, or if you are emotionally impulse buying just to construct a terrarium of security.
And second, you have to deeply interrogate the difference between emotional depth and emotional health within your own relationships.
Yeah.
Just because a dynamic is intense or dramatic or totally all-consuming does not inherently mean it is actually good for you. Friction is not a substitute for compatibility, and jealousy is never a synonym for devotion.
Never. And finally, the most difficult practice of all, allow conversations and relationships to simply happen.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
Practice letting them unfold without demanding a secured outcome the very moment you feel insecure. Do not promise the moon just because you feel a fleeting late-night moment of connection. And on the flip side, do not force a final goodbye just because the ambiguity is making you anxious.
It requires an immense amount of restraint and a real willingness to tolerate that metabolic discomfort in the brain we talked about. But honestly, it is the only way to build something that is actually real rather than just perfectly controlled.
Absolutely. As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over. Something that pushes just a bit past the boundaries of the café.
Okay, what is it?
Think about Elias and Mara walking away from each other today. If they never speak again after this afternoon, if they never get back together, was this vulnerable conversation still a success?
Oh, that's a great question.
Does true emotional transformation mean becoming entirely comfortable with an empty space in your life, rather than just waiting around to fill it with a healthier attachment?
That really reframes the whole goal, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. The ultimate insight here isn't about finding the perfect fix for your messy human interactions. It is about realizing that sometimes the most profound growth happens when you finally decide that an empty space is just a space, and you don't need to panic about filling it.
Beautifully said.
Thank you. And thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. Take these ideas, test them out in your own life, and really reflect on those quiet, uncertain spaces you usually try to rush past. We'll catch you on the next one.